Aloha and welcome to the big island of Hawaii. My name is Ingrid Stadtler-Pree. I'm a life coach, counselor, trainer and an alakai of Huna International. I've come all the way from Austria, Salzburg, back to our favorite islands, which my family and I consider already as our second home. We fell in love with the beauty of these islands and its wonderful people. And here we experienced firsthand the Aloha spirit, the loving and caring way of life that originates in the ancient Polynesian wisdom, which in modern terms is often referred to as the Huna philosophy. I've studied Huna, which is also the basis of the Hawaiian Shamanism, for more than a decade with my mentor, the renowned author, teacher, psychologist, urban shaman, and the source of Huna, Dr. Serge Kahili King. Since 2016, I'm also teaching Huna, now back home in Austria and Germany. And today, I will have the unique opportunity and great honor to interview Serge King in his rainforest home and center of Huna International in Volcano. I will also talk to Gloria Haumea King, his wife, and Susan Painiu Floyd, both board members and alakai of Huna International. Aloha, Serge.
Aloha.
I'm so very happy to be back on Hawaii again and have the opportunity to talk to you today. Thank you so much. Mahalo for taking your precious time.
My pleasure.
Let's start with a summary of your impressive CV for everybody who hears about you and Huna for the first time. You have a bachelor's degree in Asian studies, a master's in international management, and a PhD in psychology. You have been trained in Hawaiian Shamanism since childhood, and you founded Huna International and its teaching arm, Aloha International, with a worldwide network of teachers, healers, and coaches. You are the most well-known source of Huna, and you have written over 20 books translated in 18 languages, including my favorites, The Urban Shaman, Instant Healing, and Mastering Your Hidden Self. And the last book, Mastering Your Hidden Self, leads us right to the first question, because on the first pages of that book, I love your explanation of Huna and how it relates to old teachings like the Tao Te Ching, Zen Buddhism, Sufism, and even to the world religions like Christianity and Judaism and Islam. So my question also for newcomers, what is Huna and why does it make so much sense?
Well, Huna is a philosophy of living, and it is just a set of ideas. Okay? And people can follow those ideas or not, but we found that following those ideas works out really well. And so we offer those ideas to people as something that they can use, whether it's for healing or manifesting or changing their life or making the world a better place. Those ideas are very effective.
Thank you so much. Serge, you got in touch with this valuable knowledge at a very early age, about 12 years old. And maybe you could tell us when did you apply it consciously and how it really impacted your life?
Well, consciously it was when my father invited me to follow the path. I was 15. I think I was 14. Anyway. So I agreed, even though at the time cars and girls were, dominating my mind, but still I was interested in science and the esoteric world.
I can relate to that. My son is about 15 now, and he's interested in girls. Cars not so much yet. But the impact on your life then, like following that path from early age on. What do you think, what would have happened if you didn't have had Huna?
I'm not even going to speculate on that.
Okay.
I will just go ahead and say that it impacted my life and helped improve my life and my experiences with people in every way.
So why and when did you decide then to spread this valuable knowledge throughout the world?
Well, actually, I decided this when I was in Africa. I went over to Africa to work in community development, West Africa, in 1964 with my wife. And while I was there, of course, I was introduced to a lot of the African esoteric knowledge as well, what you might call shamanism, and became, I had a mentor, and I also under him learned about both the lighter and the darker sides of this and how they work. At the same time, learning how to help people and persuade them to do things to help themselves. And after a while, because I was also involved with the international community, it became clear that the people were moving more and more to the cities. The shamans were staying in the villages. And so this knowledge was not as available to them as it would have been back in the village life. So I decided then and there to create an organization that would bring this knowledge to the people in the cities.
So, sometimes people, because you said esoteric, sometimes people, including myself, get very skeptical when it comes to esoteric knowledge. But nowadays, even hard science like quantum physics confirms many of its assumptions. And with your scientific and shamanic background, can you please shine some light on how esoteric knowledge on the one hand and science on the other hand can come together?
Okay, it's because you don't compare those two. Okay. Esoteric knowledge is simply knowledge which is not immediately visible. Okay, so you have, and quantum physics is working in that area, but so is regular science. For instance, in regular science they deal regularly with electricity, which is invisible, and yet they're able to tap into it and find ways to make it work. Gravity is the same thing. It's an invisible force, still isn't even fully understood today. That's esoteric knowledge. And yet science is working with it and finding ways to make practical use of it. Well, shamans are doing the same thing. They're working with a very similar body of knowledge, and a body of knowledge not as much recognized by people who think of themselves as living in and working in an objective reality. So the expansions that are happening now with the ideas of quantum physics, and I mean the real quantum physics, not the stuff that they call quantum for some reason or another, but the real quantum physics, they're daring to go off into areas that at one time would have been considered very esoteric.
That's why it comes together now naturally anyway.
That's right, because one of the things, the most important things I learned, is that in the shamanic work, it's based on the scientific method. You make a hypothesis and you test the hypothesis. And if it works most of the time, you can think of it as a working theory. And it's exactly the same thing. You have an idea, you test it, you try it out, if it works, you use it. Same process. The thing is, shamanism works with what people with what might be called real magic. Now for me, magic is the intervention of the mind and the emotions to influence the physical world. Now, that's perhaps starting to happen with the ideas of quantum physics, but in regular physics and regular science, this idea of having the mind as an influence and emotions as an influence, using them consciously to influence events, that's a little far out right now.
It comes more and more in this body-mind medicine, for example.
Right. That's right.
That's very good. So nowadays there's a vast spiritual movement all over the world as well. With teachers like Gary Zukav, Wendaya, Eckhart Tolle, Sadhguru, just to name a few, and even renowned physicists like Peter Russell are teaching about consciousness. So, and this is wisdom that has been in Huna since ancient times. Do you think the world is now readier for those universal teachings than when you began to teach, or?
When I began to teach, there were also teachers teaching about consciousness. There were also scientific experiments going on about consciousness. Was a really big deal in the 1970s. When you say, is the world ready? The world is always ready when something useful becomes available.
Maybe it's now on a larger scale because it's
because
available to so many.
Our communication is different.
People.
I was just having a conversation with someone, and was saying that when I started off, why we didn't have all the communication stuff that's available now. We didn't have the vast numbers of books. We didn't have the internet where you could Google an answer immediately. That's fantastic, I think, but that wasn't the way it was. We worked with library cards and 3x5 notes and typewriters, and it was quite different then. We still struggled and made it though.
Absolutely. I'm happy to have,
yes,
internet.
That's a lot more fun today.
I'm happy to connect with you once a month, with
yes.
our Alakai calls. So yeah, we might have to make use of it. We have it now. Why should anyone bother getting to know Huna more deeply? What are the real benefits that make Huna so unique and useful, especially in our modern way of life?
Well, okay, the benefits are simply that it helps everything you do come out better, okay? But why should they bother? You won't bother unless you have curiosity. It takes curiosity to want to go deeper. The way I was trained is kind of unusual from most people that I know. I was encouraged to ask questions, starting with my father. And I was given some knowledge, expected to do something with that, to test it, to try it, and come back with questions. And if I did not have any questions, I didn't get any more knowledge in that area. So, but I'm intensely curious, so I did ask a lot of questions. Thinking back, I can think of a lot more questions I might have asked. But it's the question, it's the desire to know. So it's not a question of being bothered with, it's a desire to know. The desire to know more about anything that will take people deeper.
That's what I found too, having that knowledge, but then there's always more to it if you dig deeper. So, let's not hype that knowledge to put this Huna wisdom into a nutshell. Can you provide us a brief overview of the 7 principles, for example?
Well, very briefly. These principles are ideas that my uncle gave to me. Now, I put them in this order for convenience. He just gave them to me over the course of my Hawaiian uncle. I was adopted by a Hawaiian family after my father died. So he gave me these ideas in Hawaiian, according to our different times we met and talked. And so I put them in this order for convenience. Well, the first one is based on a Hawaiian word called ike. And I translated that into a principle that people could deal with. There's a lot more to it, but this is the first part. It says the world is what you think it is. Doesn't matter what's happening, you're going to interpret it. It's going to go through the filter of your beliefs, your ideas, your possibilities, your knowledge. And so how you think is going to determine your experience of the world. One of the basic meanings of ike is experience. So that's one of the first. Second one is called kala. And kala is freedom, release, and it has to do with getting rid of restrictions. So the translation I use for a principle is there are no limits. Now people say, oh, come on, how can you do that way? Well, I say, if we follow it through more practically, anything is possible if you can figure out how to do it.
I like that one.
Okay? And so that's part of kala. Makia is a word that has to do with attention, with focus, moving toward something. And so the principle is that it's a double principle. Energy flows where attention goes. So wherever you put your attention, whether that's on a part of your body or your attention on a subject of interest or anything, energy is going to flow along with that attention. The double part is that, and this is where more people can understand, attention goes where energy flows. So people are, all their attention goes on a football game, regardless of what kind, or a fire, or a hurricane, or anything energetic attracts people's attention. And so this is just saying that as a fact. Now what it means is you want to attract people's attention, you have to increase the energy of whatever it is you're doing or showing or trying. You want to increase your ability and attract other people into what you're doing, you have to maintain your focus. And that will influence the world around you.
I think one of the makia is one of my favorites as well.
Yeah.
And this putting your focus, for example, on positive things instead of criticism or the negative side, which then influences and gets that more into your life. That's one of the main big advice in Huna.
So then the fourth one is now is the moment of power, based on a word in Hawaiian meaning now, and power. Okay? So this is very practical. You can't change anything yesterday. You can't change anything tomorrow. You can only change something now. Here's where your power is. So you put more of attention here, and here's where you work to change. You want a different outcome tomorrow, you start changing something now. You want to change effects of the past, you change something now. This is where your power is. And after that comes something based on the word aloha. Very Hawaiian idea of, it means love, essentially. So really when people are greeting each other in Hawaii with aloha, it's a greeting of love. And, but if we take it apart in its roots, and I built a principle out of that, which is to love is to be happy with someone or something. That's love. Love isn't jealousy. That's based on fear and anger. Love isn't attachment. Love isn't, love is when, again, it goes on a bit. Love is not only when you are happy with something or something, but you also seek to increase the happiness of someone or something. And all of that is aloha. And then we have one based on the Hawaiian word for power, which is greatly misunderstood. The word is mana. And mana really is the word for power. It's not like some writers have said, well, there's this mysterious fluid that they believe in. That's not true at all. Mana is any kind of power, which means influence. So you may have influence because of your knowledge, because of your strength, because of your skill, because of your wealth, because of your position of authority. There's your power. Okay? It comes from somewhere. And you can increase that power. And you can use it for good or ill. That's part of free will. Right? But when you use it for good, you get back to good. That's what makes that really nice. Yes. And then finally, the last one is called pono. Very important word in Hawaiian. It means to do something, it means correct. The right thing in terms of the best effect it's going to have. Okay? A good effect. So it relates to goodness, it relates to harmony, it relates to things like that. And so you, in using that one, the principle as it's laid out is that, well, we could put it in several different ways, but one of them has to do with positive results, okay? And the idea that there's always another way to do anything. And you seek the correct way of doing something in terms of producing a healthier, happier effect. But you use anything that helps to bring that about. Sure, but you cannot get, by using something evil, you cannot get goodness out of it. It takes good to make good. And this is the basis for the word ho'oponopono, which also is greatly misunderstood. The word in Hawaiian means to clean things up, to straighten things out. Now it can be applied to relationships, but I can also say, e ho'oponopono i kapa, which means clean up the yard. Okay? Just perfectly good use right in that sense. It means to clean things up, to straighten things out.
Thanks for that short but really, deep overview of those principles. They're not just the main principles, but then there are the kind of corollaries.
There are corollaries too.
But we don't go into that right now. We don't have the time for that. But that's very good written in your books as well, which I recommended. But one of my aha moments during your teachings was the combination of the two principles, aloha and mana, in terms of loving power and powerful love, which is an absolute divine combination for me. So can you explain this to our audience a little more?
It means you use power lovingly, and you increase the effect by increasing the power and increasing the love. So the loving power is the way to use power, and you increase the love to make powerful love. That's all there is to it.
But that's what, because when somebody shies away from power, if he gets this idea, using power with aloha, I think that's then when, yes, that's what it should be. That's what it's meant. It's beautiful. So, one more thing. How does one work with Huna? How should it be applied and practiced? Do you have some practical tips for that?
Well, the most simple way, is to think about whenever you have any kind of a problem. You can have a list of the principles to look at every once in a while, but see which one of the principles jumps out to help you at that moment. Because one of them will, no matter what the problem is. If you really want to resolve the problem, one of those principles is going to give you the clue.
So, what would be your favorite techniques, or what have been your favorite techniques for improving your own life and your closest relationships? I know there are a lot of techniques, but maybe you could pick one.
No, I can't pick one to say. I have different techniques I use for different things. I have many. Let me put it this way. When I'm teaching people how to use techniques, I believe in learning a lot of techniques. To fill your memory with techniques, because then when stress comes, when a problem comes and you have to do something, then one of those is going to come forward as being the right one at the moment. And you don't have to rely on one technique, which may be a terrific technique most of the time, but for one particular thing, a different technique might work better. So I think of it when I get a class that we're all in a meadow, and there are trails going off the meadow in all directions. And each one of those trails represents a technique. And so I will tell people, I'll take you 100 yards or 100 meters on each trail, so that you know how to use the technique, you know how to apply it. You can go miles or kilometers if you want to. That's possible. But I want to give you, in this time we have, as many techniques as possible to get you started. I believe very strongly in the necessity for techniques. It's not, I think, enough to tell people to go out and do good, or go out and love the world, or think positive. What does that mean? How do you do it? I'm very interested in the how-to. So that's what I specialize in.
Absolutely, yeah. We learned a lot. So maybe, do you have a favorite daily Huna routine, kind of what you do in the morning or in the evening, which you could share? You did some days, maybe not every day.
Well, the simplest is just three things to bring to mind. Okay, and it can be done any time of the day, and it's bless the present, which means look for the good where you are and what's around you. And that's a good way to get into the present. Okay, look for something good. Bless the present. That type of blessing means to increase something. Increase something good. Okay. And trust yourself. And this means, stop putting yourself down, stop any self-criticism, trust yourself to do the best you can when you're doing whatever you're doing. That's all you can do. So it doesn't do any good to think, oh, well, I should have done that differently. That's done, gone. Do something differently now. Okay? So bless the present, trust yourself, and expect the best. Because expecting the worst is going to make you look out for bad things.
Sure.
And you're going to miss all the good stuff. Expecting the best is going to give you the best possible outcome. And give you more confidence. Now, you may not always get exactly what you want. It's the way the world works. But expecting the best is going to give you more opportunities than expecting the worst.
It's more likely to turn out
That's
good.
right.
Yeah. So, while practicing and teaching Huna myself, I got a better understanding of myself, my body, mind, and spirit. And one thing that helped immensely was the concept of the different aspects of the self in Huna. So can you tell our audience about those different aspects and how to grow by better working and communicating with ourselves?
Well, these aspects are body, mind, and spirit. They're not separate things. There's something, if you want an analogy, would be like head, hands, and feet. You can deal with them separately, and that's useful. But if you try to only deal with them separately, it doesn't work very well, okay? Because they're part of the whole. So we have different terms that we use in Hawaiian for these. That doesn't matter. But we look at each of these as having a, how can I put it, having a motivation and which is what is the pleasure that these different parts. So what is the pleasure of body? Pleasure of the body is sensory and emotional pleasure. And that's what the body goes for. So if you're trying to figure out how come something's not working, I don't seem to be all together, well, is your body with you? In whatever it is you want to do or achieve, have you taken into consideration the benefits for the body? The sensory or emotional pleasure part.
Like sitting down for children, sitting down studying, you have to give them a little bit pleasure for the body as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The people who climb mountains successfully are the ones that keep thinking about the pleasure of making it to the top. The people that don't make it are the ones that start complaining too much about the pain of the present. Okay? And you keep telling your body that, it's going, hey, why am I going on? The pleasure of the mind is resolution. Boy, that's give the mind a great pleasure. It's why the mind invents games. See, a mind game always has a resolution. Somebody wins or something is completed.
A riddle is solved.
A riddle, whatever it might be. That's a mind game. That's a pleasure for the mind, solving a problem. And this contrasts with a body game. A body game would be a child stomping around in the muddy water. There's no point to it. There's no resolution to it. It's just fun. Okay? So that's the body. But the mind loves this idea of resolution. Now, what's the pleasure of the spirit? In my opinion, the pleasure of spirit is harmony. And so it seems to me that what spirit is trying to do, that part of you, is trying to let you know through experience what it is you're manifesting and give you inspiration or guidance to reach harmony. It doesn't tell you what to do. You might get suggestions, ideas, inspiration that can come from a book. You can turn on the television just when somebody is saying the right thing. An idea can pop in when you're half asleep. This is spirit, your spirit, talking to you. Okay? And so it's trying to give you ideas to help you bring about harmony. It doesn't do it for you. And that's what our conscious mind is, the one that's supposed to be in charge.
It gets the plan and the how to do it.
That's right.
Serge, we've known each other for many years now. You are a very successful and happy person to me. And for me, you haven't aged a bit during that time we know each other. So what's your secret of happiness and youth relating to Huna?
Okay. Well, there's several things that I found being very good. First of all, one of the most important things is to take time to relax and to learn how to really do that. Now, when you really learn how to do it, you can do it in seconds. If you're really up-stressed, you can do it in minutes. But you need to, no matter what you're doing, taking that time to relax. Otherwise, if you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, the stress and stress and stress get more and more and more, and it affects the way you look, it affects the way you're able to move, it affects what you're able to do, how you think. A lot of people don't realize this, and sometimes it shocks them, but I'm 81, and I get along fine, and I have a lot of fun, and
you're teaching, writing, you're doing everything you did for...
That's right. So one of the big things is finding ways to relax, and we teach a lot of techniques for that. So learning how to do that, be aware of your body. See, a lot of people try to only work with their mind, and it's amazing how many people don't even know how their body works. And yet knowing that can help you all kinds of times when something seems to go wrong, you know it's a tension problem. We just automatically know it's a tension problem. So then you find some way to relieve the tension. Now, this doesn't have to be what some people think is a spiritual way or a mental way or avoiding don't avoid modern medicine if it can help you. That's what it's there for. But don't be totally dependent on it either. Okay? You have to involve your mind with it, you have to involve your body with it. Some kind of exercise is something your body needs. Doesn't need to overdo it, but it needs to move. That's what it's designed to do. And so relaxation and movement and doing things that give you pleasure for mind, body, and spirit.
And I remember you teaching us in our classes as well, breathe and drink a lot of water.
Yes.
Especially here on
That's
the volcanic island.
That's right, that's very important. Yeah. So, but do things that you enjoy. But make sure that you do things that all three parts of you will enjoy.
Don't neglect one of your
That's
parts, right. People say, he or she or this makes me happy. Especially in your article, Who Owns My Happiness, you state that happiness is our choice.
Yes.
But also that sometimes it's hard to choose happiness because our happiness is owned by other people or circumstances. Can you explain that, especially for people who often are unhappy or depressed?
Well, this is simply when people blame others for their unhappiness. They did this to me. Okay? And no, they didn't. They did something that you reacted to. The reaction could have been habit, something you learned and just did automatically, but the more you become aware of it, you can change it. You don't have to keep the same reaction. Some people grow up learning how to do this as a kind of what I call a power hit. Okay, blaming somebody else. Because their only option is to blame themselves. And blame doesn't solve anything. You're unhappy, you can change that anytime you want to. And it doesn't matter what it is. You can decide to be happy anyway. Now, some things make us sad. We say that. It's part of the speech we use. No, the fact is that we get sad about something. That sadness is perfectly appropriate many times. Dwelling on it over and over again, living in it, indulging in it, bringing it back time after time after time, is just going to mess you up. And also being continually angry at somebody else. Okay? Anger is self-punishment. Some very famous people have said something similar, and that's what it is. And you're not hurting the other person because you're angry, and yet sometimes people think they are, because it gives them a false sense of power when they feel helpless. There are other ways to get powerful.
So that's why it's so important and necessary also to forgive, not for the other person, but for ourselves.
That's right.
I think because
when it's appropriate, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Forgive the other person, but you're doing it so to relieve your tension.
Yeah, Serge, we witnessed you at Gloria losing your beloved Kapoor home with its magical tide pond to the lava flow last year, and we all were struck with awe how you dealt with that situation. So can you share a little bit about that, and also how people can overcome loss and hurt in general?
Okay, well that was a sad. We did. We had a beautiful home and a pond and wonderful neighbors and everything like that. Good community. And suddenly it's gone. 24 hours. Bam, not there. Well, Gloria and I have traveled a lot, changed locations a lot, been to different places, and the places we've been to are not in our life anymore. And we've been to some wonderful places. We have friends and family who have passed away. And of course that's sad when it does. And what we do, for instance, in that particular kind of occasion, we keep blessing their spirit. We happen to believe that the spirit goes on without the mind and the body. And so wherever they do, or whatever they are, or whatever they're doing, we treat them like they're still alive, and we bless them as best we can. And so instead of grieving for them, which is very self-indulgent, we give them energy. That's how we look at it. Now, in terms of Popoho, to go back to do, if something happens that you have no control over, no way to do anything about, what's the point of staying upset? Okay, so the first thing you do is, okay, this broke, I've got to fix it. And if I can't fix it, I've got to do something different. And that's it. So we don't forget about it. We remember it fondly. The same with the people. Remember the best parts of the relationship. So we not only just bless wherever they happen to be now, but remember, oh, wasn't that good, wasn't that fine? And we feel free to talk about it when we're talking about these people. We feel free to talk about the couple. It was wonderful, it was great, just isn't there anymore. And we've still got to live our life. So we don't avoid it, but we don't dwell on it either. Every once in a while, I'll reach for something that I used to have. And, that's not there anymore. Okay.
Because it was in the house.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, I'll give it 5 seconds of regret. And then it's over. I don't have it. I got to do something different.
So you allowed yourself a little period of grief.
Sure.
For sure. But then moved on, and remember it fondly.
Yeah, it's more like, not bypassing it or suppressing it or putting it, it's just letting it go. It is what it is. And we are, and here is where we are, so let's do what's appropriate here and now.
Serge, in 2000, the year of 2000, you introduced a stress release and self-healing technique called the dynamite technique.
Yes.
In your book, Healing for the Millions, you describe the method and its benefits in numerous case studies. And for my master's degree in counseling, I also conducted a scientific study in 2013, which also proved various benefits of this dynamite technique as well. So can you provide us maybe a short description and a comparison to tapping techniques like EFT, like the emotional freedom technique?
Sure. Well, speaking of the emotional freedom technique, that's the one that inspired me to create dynamite. The emotional freedom technique did some things exceptionally fast, and that intrigued me. So then one of my hobbies is analyzing a technique and going back to see which is the part of the technique that's actually accomplishing something. Okay. So I analyzed it, I was very impressed, and I analyzed it, and I thought, well, we have a lot of good techniques, but what would happen if I combined those techniques so that we had, let's say if I had 4 techniques, and I put them together, one right after the other, we might have accumulation effect on healing or relieving tension. And that's what happened. That's what happened. So we have a breath, it includes a breath technique, a verbal technique, not an affirmation, but statement. And it involves usually the thing is that we use 4 points on the body that are very, very important for harmonizing, that a lot of Chinese and kinesiology people use. They're good points. So, but we do that kind of thing as well. So I pick a point for each side of the body, and that would be stimulating. So when we say tapping, tapping is one way to stimulate it. Holding it and humming is another way to stimulate it. We've tried it with light beams, and that stimulates it. Light pressure without any tapping at all will work. So tapping is kind of fun to do and easy to remember, but it's not the tapping, it's the stimulation.
Yeah, stimulation.
Right.
And you added one point, which is a Hawaiian.
Well, every part of the body, yes,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. On each side.
Yeah, I get very good results, you know, and the thing that what I like about that dynamite technique most of all, you can teach it very easily, and then people can apply it themselves very easily. So you have this, you can help people to help themselves, which is one of the most important things.
That's one of the most important parts. But the other thing is, if, let's say, think in terms of coaching, sometimes people get so stressed, they can't do it themselves at first. And so having a coach guide them through it until they're ready to do it themselves, very helpful.
Yeah, and because with this technique you can also kind of go deeper in layers.
Yes.
And that's why a coach is very helpful for.
Well, that's one of the assumptions that we make.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. I also love Hawaiian Geomancy, which I teach in my Huna Level 2 workshops now as well. And can you tell our audience about Hu and Na in that perspective, and how to find power spots in nature or create them yourself for energizing purposes, healing purposes?
Oh, that's a lot. Okay. Well, first of all, we can take the word Huna, which can have many meanings. It refers to esoteric knowledge, and a lot of ancient chants and even more modern chants make that very clear. It's a Hawaiian word, and it refers to esoteric knowledge. Now, but when we take it apart, with what we have is something very similar to yang and yin. Hu is a word that means to rise up, to effervesce, to move up. So, in fact, when there's too much Hu, Hawaiian word is hu-hu, and it means anger. Okay? So there's too much chaos, right? So and then the na is a word that means quiet, still, especially the kind of relaxation that comes after a healing. Okay, that's na. And so, in general, in helping people, we say we don't try to get rid of anything, but if there's too much na, we increase the hu. Movement, you can think of it, and stillness. Okay? If there's too much movement, we increase the na. And that's a completely different way of looking at it, but very effective.
So, and the natural power spots?
Natural power spots are all over the place. In fact, Feng Shui has studied this, many different kinds of it, longer than anybody else. But Hawaiians used it as well, and they had special trainings, and people who would be able to do that because it was important. Let's take a heiau, a temple. The ideal temple site would be on a ridge facing the ocean with a stream coming down both sides. That's ideal. And so you find many of them like that. However, you don't always find the right conditions. So there are temples that I've seen where they had a stream coming down one side and dug a trench on the other side from the source of the water. So they would have that on both sides. Can't always have it on a ridge, so they build it on a hill. And so there's lots of different ways to try and get as close to what they felt was in the ideal, harmonizing with nature and energizing of the site. Okay. So it takes some practice for many people to feel energy, ambient energy, let's call it, because there's so many terms that make it difficult to work with energy, but energy is simply movement. It can be very soft, almost no movement, but there's always energy. If there's no energy whatsoever, there's no existence. But if there's nothing but movement, there's no existence. So we think of it as a wave. That, to take a quote from some scientists, somehow there was a first wave. That there was chaos and there was total stillness, and they got together and formed the first wave. And from that wave came all the other waves, and all the different kinds of frequencies and waves that produce the world that we have around us. And so you can learn by practice, simple things, being able to, for instance, feel the energy of a color. I used to do classes where we teach people how to do that. So you can actually feel the difference between yellow and red and blue and things like that. They give off different sensations. Or the energy that is stronger in corners. It's not that the energy collects, the energy is just movement, but it is more intense. Okay? And probably because of the restriction. And it's also why Chinese would always break up a corner.
Put a knot plant in
right, something, or make the
mm-hmm.
corner come down like this and then shift over this way.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so they knew about that very well. But the Hawaiians used it as well.
So if you want to make your own energy spot, for example,
okay.
I remember teaching you when we were walking on a very nice path that between two trees there is energy.
Sure. There's so many natural ones. Mm-hmm. Trees have an energy field, like an aura. Mm-hmm. Okay? Some trees are stronger than other trees, but nevertheless, if you have two trees that are about a meter or a yard apart, no, if it gets more than that, it's mm-hmm. not as strong. But the field between those two trees is both of the fields intermingled. And when you stand in that, typically if you stand with your feet together and your eyes closed, most people, you can watch them, they'll either suddenly fall forward or fall backward or start moving in a circle. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's their reaction to the energy. Mm-hmm. So that's a natural energy spot. And it helps you relax and energize at the same time. It's great. It's like breathing. Right? And so that's one thing in nature. Different water flowing, waterfalls, which is why they have waterfalls in shopping centers. It's to reinvigorate people so they can keep shopping. Okay? But it is because those waterfalls produce, use scientific terms, negative ions that are very refreshing. Caves of all kinds are very natural, energizing power spots, energizing in a good, calming way, because they also create negative ions. The reason the negative ions are so important is because there's so many places where there's too much who. Mm-hmm. Positive ions can be thought of as who. Mm-hmm. And it's just too energetic. And so we need the not. That's right. And sometimes sitting in a cave for a while is just, oh, I can't stand this anymore. You're going to get out and get some who. Right?
Great. So now you told us a lot about who and na and the Huna knowledge. Can you tell us a little bit more about your organization, Huna International, the Aloha Project, and the Resource Center with all of our archives?
Okay. Well, Huna International, I founded. It's a non-sectarian religious order and incorporated in California and registered as a foreign corporation here in Hawaii. And so that's the legal status. And the Aloha International, as the teaching arm, is the name we give to the courses and the things that we would send out, and the booklets that we have on blessing and on healing that we give out for free all around the world. That's part of this Aloha Project. And the Aloha Project would give people an opportunity, they don't have to do this, but to make a pledge to make the world a better place. And we give them ideas of different ways in which they can do that. Because people help in many different fashions. So we just give them a bunch of ideas for doing that. And a place where they can communicate with other people, especially now that we have the things like Facebook, where people can get together in groups and help each other, like never before. Okay? And so that's part of what that is. Now the resource page is on our website, and that contains different things that we have for helping people, including a list of the people that we have who are leaders and teachers and healers. We call, in English we would say alakai, in Hawaiian it's alakai. And so there's a list of the ones who want to be listed. And these are people that we have all around the world doing good work. And people can find out who they are and who to contact.
Yeah, you told me, I think currently we have about 70 alakai.
Over 70 now, yes.
In more than 11 countries, so it's quite an organization already.
Yes.
And yeah, so today is the alakai ordination of two new members to our Huna International staff.
Right.
Jeff Donahue from Maui and Jonathan Hammond from New York. So can you provide us with a short explanation of that ceremony, just an introduction?
Okay. Well, very basically, it's a Hawaiian-based ceremony, but what it does is have these people make a pledge to do certain things, to help people, to help each other, to help the organization, and the organization makes a pledge to help them. And then they are, because this is a non-profit religious corporation, then they are ministers legally. And of course what they can do with that depends on the local laws wherever they happen to be living. But they are by nature, by intent, and at their choice, teachers and healers and helpers.
Yeah, I still remember my alakai ceremony. It was a very, very touching moment to make this pledge and to know you really dedicate your life to this good cause. And looking forward to the ceremony today. Now we're going to the big questions. Mankind has always been trying to answer the following big questions. Who are we? Where do we come from? And where do we go? And what is the purpose of our life?
Okay.
So could you share the Huna approach?
Give me the first one again.
Who are we?
Who are we? It's simple. We are who we are. I used the Popeye philosophy. Mm-hmm. I am what I am, that's all that I am. And that's who you are. You are who you are. Right?
And this body, spirit, body, mind.
That's a way of describing it, yes,
yeah.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Now,
where do we come from?
Our mothers. Well, our fathers are usually involved too. Basically, we come from our mothers. Now, anything else is not even theoretical because you can't be tested. Anything else is hypothetical. Okay? And people have all kinds of ideas from all around the world, and different philosophies and religions, but those are just ideas that people have. Where do we go? It's the same thing. Recently I saw a play, Hamlet, with Shakespeare. Well, Shakespeare said a wonderful thing that was in the play. And he said, death, that unknown land from which travelers never return. Well, no travelers have ever returned to tell us what they experienced. The fact that somebody's brain is dead and they come back to life means they didn't die. Okay? Somebody who is really gone, their bones are molded away and their body doesn't exist anymore, and I've never seen one of those come back. Now, people talk about spirits, okay, and that's fine. I believe that spirits can choose to communicate. But the thing is, all these spirits have different ideas. Isn't that interesting? They don't all have the same, you go to the same place and this is what it is. It depends on the religion, depends on their background, depends on all kinds of things. So that's again hypothetical. So my thought is, well, if you feel unsure about it and it bothers you, make something up. Make up a good story that you like about where you came from and where you're going to go. Why not? Nobody knows any different. And if it makes you feel good now, why not?
I remember you teaching them to this kind of Huna approach of the world we know here, you know, the physical world, and then the world in Po, the kind of
invisible
spiritual,
world.
invisible world.
Right.
So we can believe we came from Po and go back to Po, or is it just an hypothesis?
If you like, sure, it's a hypothesis, but if you like that, okay. But you got to remember, in the real Hawaiian sense of Po and Ao, okay. Ao is visible world. Po is invisible. The wind is invisible. So that's part of Po. Your thoughts are invisible. Gravity is invisible. That's Po. Po doesn't exist somewhere else.
No, it's right here.
Right here.
But not visible. Yeah.
That's right. That's all the difference it is.
But that's where we might think to feel and still have our ancestors, our
sure, a lot of people do that, and it gives them great peace and happiness to think that way. Yeah. I'm all for that.
To bless the spirits when they're gone, much better than to mourn them.
That's right.
Okay, yeah.
If you want to make altars to them and get them flowers or do these things that makes you feel good, go ahead and do it. Okay? You don't have to try and impose that on other people.
Yeah. No.
No, but I mean, a lot of people try. Yeah. My point is, nobody knows. So pick the one you like best. You can use somebody else's idea if you want to. Nothing wrong with that. Or you can make up your own.
So the last one was, what's the purpose of our life?
Purpose of life. Well, very clearly and easily and obviously, your purpose is to be here. So, to exist, to experience life. Okay? I mean, obviously, this is what you are and this is what you're doing. Okay? Now, going beyond that, people usually think in terms of some future thing that they're supposed to do or are seeking to do. If you like that, go ahead and think of it that way and choose a purpose. If you feel drawn to certain things, you can encourage that and follow that, or not. It's up to you. You can choose a different one. You start moving in one direction and it doesn't seem to go anywhere. Doesn't mean you've lost your purpose. It means you have an opportunity to make a different one. So the basic purpose is to exist. The secondary purpose is to choose something.
Make something out of your life, kind of.
Well, I mean, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can choose, to just
being.
lie around and take up space if you want to. But that's up to you. There's no, in this philosophy, because I have to bring this in, if you don't mind. Freedom. This is a non-hierarchical system. It's not that hierarchy is bad, it's just that we don't use or think of hierarchy in practicing this system. If you have a part of your life in which you believe in and like a hierarchy, fine, but Huna doesn't care. Think any way you want as long as it works for you. But there's no hierarchy within Huna. My role is a caretaker, for instance. I don't run things. I do things to help keep things running. That's a big difference. I've chosen as a purpose. Okay? I don't have to. And I don't do it every day. There are days when I watch television, or read a book, or do something else. I choose my purposes as the opportunity comes.
Yeah, I just found it fulfilling to have the purpose of spreading aloha,
Good.
which is really
That's
good purpose that
that's the purpose we offer the organization to do.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's a beautiful
That's
one.
right.
So, Serge, every generation faces special challenges. Can you share from the Huna perspective some ideas of how to tackle those challenges, for example, like climate change and its potential consequences, like those unprecedented streams of migrating people seeking better life conditions?
Well, okay, let's put it this way. The earth changes. It has always changed. It always will change. In a particular generation or period of life, we're going to experience whatever changes the earth is going through. And so what do you do about it? You do the best you can. You can't do anything else. Right? It's not a question of controlling it because it's too big. So we have to do what we can and what we believe is helpful in doing that. That's all we have. Only choice we have. The idea of migration, this is not unprecedented migration. I mean, if you look back in the world, you can see migrations that were far, far bigger than this one. But it is a difficult situation, and I have to say, the same thing applies. You do the best you can. Now, we would say, do the best you can with aloha, with love, with caring, with harmonizing, for the best effects. Okay? Trying to stop it dead because you don't like the people isn't going to work very well. Okay? It's going to have unpleasant consequences all over. Finding a way to help these people, because they're migrating for some reason, and whether that way is helping them to settle where they are. For instance, part of my work in Africa had to do with refugee work. And so what the solution they had in some of the African countries at the time was they would allow the refugees in, migrants would be the same word we use today, allow the refugees in and set aside some land for them to work. Okay? And the curious thing came up in notes I was reading about my experience. And it was in a particular case in Senegal, the refugees wanted to pay tax so that they could have the benefits. Okay? They weren't asking for citizenship. They were asking for ways in which they can participate to both help the country they're in and continue living. Okay? So they did their best to accommodate these people at that time in those places. It's much more difficult today. Their numbers are higher than we're used to dealing with. The government doesn't move fast. That's bureaucracy, that's everywhere in the world. And yet, we have to do the best we can with aloha to help them as best we can. And that the final solutions are going to be widely different. But again, we do the best we can.
Absolutely. I think that all leaders in all the countries on the world, if they try the best they can with aloha,
yes,
that would be definitely a different world. I just can say the personal impact that Huna, you and your books have had on me personal is immense. It's like the wisdom of the world put in a few Hawaiian words with such an immense, deep and profound meaning. It has enhanced my personal well-being and happiness, my relationships, my parenting, my work, and it was always amazing to witness and to see people, my clients or people in the seminars, how they benefited profoundly from this Huna approach on the one hand and the Huna techniques on the other hand. So I hope our audience, you have gained now some more insights into how Huna, which I like to call the ancient science of happiness, health and success, can improve our own lives and then ultimately society and the world as a whole. Because always, the positive change always starts within each and every one of us. And if you like some more information or help or are interested in Huna workshops, please contact us through Huna International's homepage, huna.org, or my homepage, which is suncoaching.net. So we wish you all the best and send you our blessings and love.
Aloha.
And Serge, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and the world. And mahalo, aloha, and ahui ho.